Welcome back to Recall Files. I'm your host, and this is episode 7 of our deep dive into the Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal. In our previous episodes, we witnessed the shocking revelation that Volkswagen had cheated emissions tests on 11 million vehicles worldwide. CEO Martin Winterkorn resigned in disgrace, the company's stock plummeted, and governments around the world demanded answers. But the question remained, who was truly responsible? Today, we explore how the investigations intensified, how the first arrests were made, and how Volkswagen's carefully constructed lies began to unravel. This is The Fallout Begins. Let's quickly recap where we left off. September 18, 2015, the EPA exposed Volkswagen's use of illegal defeat devices. September 22nd, VW admitted to cheating on 11 million cars globally. September 23rd, Martin Winterkorn resigned as CEO. By early October, criminal investigations had been launched in Germany and the United States. The world watched as one of the most trusted automotive brands in history faced potential criminal prosecution. But this was just the beginning of a legal and financial nightmare that would span years and cost tens of billions of dollars. Within days of the scandal breaking, the hunt for the guilty began. On October 8, 2015, German prosecutors raided Volkswagen's headquarters in Wolfsburg. Armed with search warrants, investigators seized computers, hard drives, emails, and internal documents. They weren't looking for corporate misconduct anymore. They were building criminal cases against individuals. In the United States, the Department of Justice opened a criminal investigation. The FBI joined the hunt. This wasn't about fines. This was about prison time. Over the next 18 months, investigators would interview hundreds of employees, analyze millions of emails, and piece together a conspiracy that spanned nearly a decade. But it wasn't just Germany and America. The Dieselgate scandal triggered investigations across the globe. South Korea banned 80 VW models and raided the company's Seoul offices. France opened a fraud investigation and raided VW's French headquarters. Italy's prosecutors in Milan launched their own probe. The UK, Canada, Australia, Switzerland, India, nation after nation joined the hunt. Each country asked the same questions. How many of our citizens were deceived? How much pollution did these cars really emit? And who knew about it? Volkswagen faced a coordinated global assault on multiple legal fronts simultaneously. There was nowhere to hide. Volkswagen's initial defense was simple: blame a small group of rogue engineers. The company insisted this was not a systemic failure, not a corporate culture problem, just a few bad actors making unauthorized decisions. Former CEO Martin Winterkorn claimed he knew nothing until the EPA announcement. But as investigators dug deeper, that narrative fell apart. Internal emails surfaced showing engineers had raised concerns about emissions compliance years earlier and were told to find workarounds. Whistleblowers came forward describing a culture where meeting targets mattered more than following rules. The defeat device wasn't developed by accident. It was engineered, tested, refined, and deployed across multiple vehicle models over nearly a decade. This required coordination, approval, and funding. Someone at the top had to know. January 7, 2017, the first major arrest. Oliver Schmidt, the former Volkswagen emissions compliance manager for the United States, was detained by FBI agents at Miami International Airport. He was about to board a flight back to Germany. Instead, he was taken into federal custody and charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States. Schmidt wasn't a low-level engineer. He had personally met with California regulators in 2015 and allegedly lied directly to them about the defeat devices. The FBI had emails proving he knew about the fraud. His arrest sent shockwaves through Volkswagen. If a compliance manager could be arrested, who was next? The company's rogue engineer's defense was officially dead. In August 2016, James Liang became the first Volkswagen employee to plead guilty. Liang was an engineer who admitted to being on a team that designed the defeat device software. In court, he described how the conspiracy worked. Engineers knew the cars couldn't meet emission standards without sacrificing performance, so they programmed the engine control units to detect when the car was being tested and only then activate full emissions controls. During normal driving, the controls were disabled, allowing the cars to emit up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxides. Liang cooperated with prosecutors, providing crucial testimony. In August 2017, he was sentenced to 40 months in federal prison and fined $200,000. It was the first blood in what would become a long legal battle. Oliver Schmidt's fate was even harsher. In December 2017, he was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, the longest sentence yet in the Dieselgate scandal. The judge was clear: corporate executives cannot hide behind the company when they personally participate in fraud. Schmidt had lied to regulators, destroyed evidence, and helped cover up the conspiracy. His sentence sent a message: there are consequences for corporate crime, and those consequences include prison. But the biggest fish remained out of reach. In May 2018, U.S. prosecutors indicted Martin Winterkorn on charges of conspiracy and wire fraud. The indictment alleged that Winterkorn knew about the emissions cheating as early as 2006, years before the scandal broke. If true, it meant the CEO had overseen the fraud for nearly a decade while publicly promoting Volkswagen's commitment to clean diesel technology. But there was a problem. Winterkorn was in Germany, and Germany doesn't extradite its citizens to the United States. He would never face an American jury. In December 2016, 5 other Volkswagen executives were also indicted, all safely in Germany, all beyond the reach of U.S. law enforcement. American prosecutors had built their cases, but they couldn't make the arrests. While the criminal cases made headlines, the financial devastation was staggering. In June 2016, Volkswagen reached a historic settlement with the United States, $14.7 billion, the largest automotive consumer class action settlement in American history. The deal included buybacks or repairs for nearly 500,000 affected vehicles, $10 billion in direct compensation to vehicle owners, $2.7 billion for environmental remediation, and $2 billion for zero-emission vehicle infrastructure. But that was just the United States. Germany, Canada, Australia, the UK, every country pursued its own settlements. By 2019, the total cost had exceeded $30 billion, and it was still climbing. Beyond the financial costs, there was the human toll. Researchers calculated the real-world environmental impact of 11 million cars emitting up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxides for years. The estimate? Thousands of premature deaths from air pollution across Europe and the United States. Communities near highways had been breathing toxic emissions while Volkswagen marketed clean diesel technology. The company's fraud hadn't just cost money, it had cost lives. Perhaps the most surreal image of the scandal came from California's Mojave Desert. Tens of thousands of bought-back Volkswagen diesels sat in massive rows, a so-called diesel graveyard. Aerial photographs showed the scale: hundreds of millions of dollars worth of vehicles, perfectly functional but worthless because of software fraud. Some would be repaired and resold, others would be scrapped entirely. It was a monument to corporate deception, visible from space. The market impact was immediate and brutal. Volkswagen's diesel sales in the United States collapsed. Before the scandal, diesel represented 25% of VW's U.S. sales. By 2017, it was under 2%. The clean diesel dream was dead. Dealerships were devastated. Thousands of unsold TDI models sat on lots, unsellable. the company launched massive incentive programs just to move inventory. Resale values of used diesel VWs dropped by thousands of dollars overnight. Owners who had paid premiums for fuel-efficient, environmentally friendly cars suddenly found themselves driving stigmatized vehicles worth a fraction of what they'd paid. By early 2017, the scope of Dieselgate was undeniable, but many questions remained unanswered. How high did the conspiracy really go? Did Martin Winterkorn personally order the defeat devices, or did he simply look the other way? Why didn't anyone blow the whistle sooner? How did the fraud go undetected for nearly a decade? And perhaps most troubling, if Volkswagen could cheat for this long, how many other automakers were doing the same? The investigations had exposed the fraud, but they hadn't fully explained how a company with Volkswagen's reputation